trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Well, welcome to the program. Happy Monday to everybody out there. Thank you so much for listening. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. And, man, I'm telling you, we are in the middle of our coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. And we're talking, of course, about Arkansas politics. And a lot of people might be assuming that the session is kind of winding down, if you will. They're going to adjourn for a spring break on Wednesday, so they will not be convening at all on Thursday. It's just kind of a mini spring break, you know what I mean? They just take Thursday and Friday off. But I'm telling you, it was very interesting what happened this past Friday, specifically after we got done with this particular, with this broadcast, as the show ended on Friday. We spent a lot of time telling you about a new bill that was filed by Senator Jim Hendren, who is the president pro temp of the Senate. We were highlighting that he had filed a bill that had a policy of an earned income tax credit that would mirror what the federal government does, which is a welfare program, also a way to redistribute the wealth. And we highlighted that in a lot of the program on Friday, just how strange it was that a Republican that was flanked by a ton of Democrats would file a bill like that. And we talked about it a lot, and I'm going to talk about it some more. What I really found interesting, though, is I guess towards the end of the day, like later in the afternoon, Senator Hendren, I guess it's really Senator Hester, but Senator Hendren, I know he was tweeting about it. They come across with another bill, which is the internet sales tax bill, which is paired with some corporate tax reform. So essentially what they're saying is, here is some corporate tax reform, meaning net operating loss. You can, I think, what does it say? Extend that to 20 years, take that for 20 years. Tweaking some things here or there that would be good for corporations, but you got to take the internet sales tax with it as well. And we'll be talking about that today also. I think the most interesting thing that happened Friday after I got off the air was that the link to the Arkansas Democrat Party's website that I had covered extensively all of a sudden disappeared. Matter of fact, I tweeted about it. Joe, can you throw this tweet up? Throw my tweet. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. So here's my tweet, and I said, let me see here. Interesting, the link to the Arkansas Democrat press release on earned income tax credit is now no longer working. I covered it extensively this morning. Now you can see if you share the link there, it still shows that photo. This is the photo, Senator Hendren, flanked by mostly Democrats. There are a few Republicans peppered in there, but it's mostly a bunch of Democrats, because this is a policy goal of an earned income tax credit welfare program. It's a policy goal they've been trying to get for 10 years here in the state of Arkansas. And a lot of people wondering why in the world would we now be offering this. Now, I know there's other things in the bill. It's not just a straight earned income tax credit. They're saying that it's going to be paid for, because everything has to be revenue neutral. They're saying it's going to be paid for by raising cigarettes, raising the tax on cigarettes. Oh, by the way, the paper is reporting that the tax on your cigarettes will be about 80 cents a pack. But I think if you do the math, some of the math that I have seen actually means it would be closer to 88 cents a pack if you look at the numbers, from what I have seen, it's actually 88 cents a pack. I mean, what's 8 cents, right? Oh, it's a whole lot. It's a whole lot. Let me tell you. Gas today was at $2, went by $2.22. And I just thought to myself, well, come October, when they raise our gas tax prices, because it's already passed, to fund our highways, that sign's going to say $2.25. Because they say that's an estimate. It's going to be an estimated 3 cents for gas and 6 cents for diesel. It's a lot of money, actually, to me. I mean, I think it's a lot for... I think most people would agree with me. If you're not inside that marble palace psychological bubble, it's almost impenetrable. So the phone number this morning, 870-275-9799. Why do you think the Arkansas Democrat Party removed this photo from their website? Why do you think they removed the press release in its entirety? Obviously, I reached out. I tweeted them several times. I reached out to the communications director for the Democrat Party because I'm just curious as to why. Matter of fact, if you don't believe me, this is still the live link. Joe, click over to the Democrat website. This is still the live link here. This is what you get. The page you're looking for is no longer here. Do what? Yeah, we even just refreshed it. Matter of fact, if you'll go to the other link, if you'll actually go to the news portion, see, this is the live link here of the Arkansas Democrat Party website. This is where the press release was officially. Okay? By the way, we're giving the Arkansas Democrat Party website probably more press than it's seen in a while, just by being on this program. But see, it should be there at the top. I mean, that's where it was Friday morning, and now it's gone. And I'm just wondering, did they not like the photo? Did somebody ask them to take the photo down? If so, who asked them to take the photo down? I mean, was it, I don't know. I honestly don't know. You know what it might have been? It might have been the fact that the more conservatives who become aware of what an earned income tax credit actually is, the less chance they have of getting their year-long policy goal achieved. That may be what it is. And so they're saying, you know what? We need the Republicans to support Senator Hendren, and we don't need to give the Republicans any excuse to not support this earned income tax credit idea because it's something that we want. And so they probably just kind of said, hey, let's cut our losses here. Let's get rid of the link so less Republicans can find out really what this is, so less Republicans can see the photo of their fellow Republican Jim Hendren being flanked by Democrats. You know, that doesn't exactly give, if you're a Republican and you're going to vote for a Democrat idea, you got to have cover in order to go back home and tell your people why you voted for a redistribution of wealth scheme. And so that photo being circulated, of course, it's still out there, obviously. That may not really help. So maybe they say, let's take down the press release. We don't need Republicans out there knowing that Democrats are celebrating something that Jim Hendren is doing with a bunch of Democrats. Oh, by the way, I couldn't help it. I think I jokingly tweeted that maybe one of the reasons they took the photo down after we did the show on it on Friday is because the Arkansas Democrat Party found out that press conference really wasn't about the earned income tax credit. It was about the formation of a brand new political party in Arkansas called the Jimocrat Party. And they said, well, we're not the Jimocrats. We're Democrats. We want to be Democrats. We don't want to give the new Jimocrat Party all of this free press and publicity, so we need to take the link down. We need to do something different. If you want an analysis of what this really is, you can head to conduitforaction.org. There's a piece up right now, redistribution of wealth legislation filed in Arkansas. Senate Bill 571 is called the Earned Income Tax Credit. Joe, throw this up there. We have this over at Conduit for Action. It's legislation to redistribute wealth to the people with lower income. It's a spending program. If the credit is greater than what the person owes in state income taxes, the person gets to pocket the money given by Arkansas. Okay? Liberal advocates argue it's just modeling the federal law that has been in existence for years. But conservatives are critical of the cash giveaway that is intended to redistribute wealth. Just 2 years ago, the same idea was sponsored by Democrats, but the bill only received 28 votes out of the 100 members of the Arkansas House of Representatives. Only 4 Republicans voted for it just 2 years ago. The legislature opted instead to pass legislation to give tax relief to lowering the income tax rate on low-income and middle-income earners. Based on a history of Arkansas conservatives opposing the idea and the sound defeat of the legislation, it was surprising on Thursday to see Senate leader Senator Jim Hendren, a Republican from Gravette, sponsor the income redistribution legislation. Hendren, who is the nephew of Governor Asa Hutchinson, is joined on the bill by other Republican legislators and obviously by Democrats. Why are some Republicans supporting liberal legislation soundly rejected 2 years ago? It has the smell of a political payback to the Democrats for supporting other legislation. Perhaps it's the price Democrats demanded from tax and spend Republicans for supporting the governor's road program and voting to increase the tax on gasoline and diesel fuel and proposing a new half-cent% sales tax beginning in 2023. Support for the legislation may be political payback, but they are paying with it with your money. They're paying for it with your money. Supporters of the income redistribution will tell you, don't worry, the money is coming from increased tax collections on tobacco products and from redirecting tax money collected for medical marijuana. They think it won't matter to you unless you're a smoker or a retailer who sells tobacco products, but it should matter to all of us. No matter which tax is used for income redistribution, it's our money, and it's taxes on us. Let me say something else. It's no guarantee, by the way, if you actually look at the numbers, it's no guarantee that this is going to pay for itself over time. Meaning you give the earned income tax credit, which essentially means, you're going to be able to get more than you pay in. I mean, that's just the way an earned income tax credit works. That's why I call it a welfare program, where you're going to have people who are, and we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of this here in just a little bit, but you're going to have people who essentially get way more than they put in. I mean, that's the whole point of it. That's why the Democrats support it. That's why they would have rather had earned income tax credit than a $50 million tax cut on income taxes, because you have a lot of people who are poor that don't make enough money to pay much in income taxes. But I also think you have to look at it from this standpoint. There are less people who are smoking year in and year out. I mean, I know vaping is kind of an uptick right now, but this is a tax on a product that has diminishing returns. Over time, there are less people who are smoking, okay? And that means that you're going to have less money over time. You're going to have people sign up getting an earned income tax credit every day. Every day that's going to happen. If anything, that might be the best reason to oppose this piece of legislation from Jim Hendren, aside from the fact that it's a giant giveaway to the Democrats, going to give them a policy. I mean, it makes no sense. The Democrat Party is shrinking. Their ideas get soundly rejected, and now the Republicans are going to give them what they want. It just makes absolutely no sense unless it is a payback. But you can oppose this bill just simply based on the fact that it doesn't really make sense mathematically over the long term. Now, you can say right now, well, 88 cents a pack, that's going to raise the $100 million, and then we're going to take that $100 million, and then we're going to allow them to use this earned income tax credit program or whatever. We're going to tweak standardized deductions and everything else, because the bill does some of that as well. But the bottom line is, over time, you're going to have diminishing returns on that tax, And you're going to have more and more people signing up for earned income tax credit or qualifying for earned income tax credit all the time. It's just going to balloon out of control. That's why it's a terrible policy idea. That's why Republicans rejected this idea 2 years ago, and now here it is again. It's very, very, very odd. Of course, that photo has been taken down off their website, but the internet is forever. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, I just want to know exactly, just real quick, briefly, we're going to touch on this. We're going to have author, master storyteller, Mr. Dan Perkins back on the show. Just want to ask him a little bit about what's going on with Brexit. Have you heard about this? I just want to know what is going on with Brexit. It is just an example of how when the people rise up and they use the democratic process, the legal process, to speak their mind about what the government, any government, is doing. The elites do everything they can to keep the change from actually happening. We have seen that right here in Arkansas, by the way. We have seen it. Folks, the people of this state rose up and they threw off the shackles of 138 years of the Arkansas Democrat Party, and the elites, the power players, have figured out a way to make sure things don't change at a fast pace. That's putting it mildly. We're raising taxes, folks. We're raising taxes on people and cutting them over here, raising them over here. Anyway, we'll continue to monitor this. By the way, on the whole corporate tax reform, I've been leaving this window open, saying, are they going to come with some sort of corporate tax reform? Because I had seen a document earlier in the session, and so that's why I knew that they might actually launch some sort of attempt to do corporate tax reform or little tweaks here, But I didn't know they were going to put it with the internet sales tax. You see what I'm saying? So it may be a military veterans retirement tax cut with tax increases all over again. Back in a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, it was a week ago today that the Arkansas Senate successfully passed an amendment to the Constitution that we're going to be voting on in 2020, which would ask us to extend a half-cent sales tax that is set to expire in 2022. Originally, this was a 10-year program sold to the people in 2011. We voted on it in 2012 to fund specific projects. It was former State Representative Jonathan Barnett put into place. He actually was against this particular piece of legislation because he felt like it went against what the people were told, that it would sunset. And it's something that we've talked about, how this fuels skepticism in government, that you can't believe what they tell you. Hey, we'll grow government now and shrink it later. And then, of course,
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So this morning we have Michael Wickline in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette with the headline, Senate Panels Poised to Look at Agency Changes, which has to do with the reorganization effort of Governor Hutchinson to bring basically 15 secretaries, to create basically 15 secretaries that answer directly to him, as opposed of all these other agencies that we have. And tax cuts. Okay, tax cuts are in this. Now, interestingly enough, on the third paragraph, Senator Jim Henron, Republican Sulphur Springs, said he hopes to ask the Senate Tax Committee this week to support his legislation to provide about $100 million a year in income tax cuts for moderate and low-income people. The cuts would be paid for by taxes on cigarettes and e-cigarettes. Now, notice in that third paragraph, they mention nothing about an earned income tax credit program. They just say income tax cuts. They mention nothing about how this is something the Democrat Party has been wanting for a long, long, long time. Now, if you scroll through here, and let's see, let's Control F, Lane Jean. Representative Lane Jean, a Republican from Magnolia, a member of both House committees, said Friday, quote, "I'm not for it." He noted that creating an earned income tax credit was not part of the recommendations of the Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force that Jean and Hendren co-chaired. Stop. This is now the second legislator to come out and publicly criticize Jim Hendren. Now, don't think this is a direct criticism of Jim Hendren, because Jonathan Dismang did it on Friday. On Friday, he was quoted in the paper as saying, "I don't support Jim Hendren's tobacco tax increase earned income tax credit bill because it's not anything to do with what the task force was created to do. We're getting all these ideas." Now, that led me to come up, I basically said that the commentary on Friday was, what in the world was the task force for then? Just what in the world was it for? By that afternoon, there was another bill that had dropped. I believe it was actually scheduled to be dropped today, but because the proponents of the earned income tax credit, the Democrats, Senator Hendren, were having a pretty bad day. I think they were, because I think the word had gotten out that this was a liberal policy, and I think people were realizing that this is not something that needs to be supported. So then on Friday, they dropped Senator Hester's bill, which is an internet sales tax bill, but has tweaks to the corporate tax code that will be advantageous for corporations. Will be good for them. It will be tax relief for them, in a way. So I think, man, that's pretty interesting. And then there was an article from the Tax Foundation that came out and said that this idea, these corporate tax ideas, this idea comes from the task force. They had an article that said, oh, by the way, this was one of the recommendations, directly contradicting what I had said, what Senator Dismang had said yesterday, or on Friday. Now, does anyone find that hilarious? I find it hilarious because that's just the way people work here. This is all more of this is all about the theatrics. This is all about who can get the information to the people first. Because first impressions are everything here. And the first impression of Senator Hendren's earned income tax credit, this redistribution of wealth scheme, this policy that the Democrat Party, on their principles, they rightfully want it, but the Republicans have historically, traditionally rejected it, and now all of a sudden they're going to get what they want? It just doesn't make any sense. And so now you have Republican Representative Lane Jean saying, I'm not for it, because creating an earned income tax credit, according to Wickline's reporting, was not part of the recommendations of the Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force. We did the governor's tax cut, and we still have to do the internet sales tax, Jean said. House Revenue and Taxation Committee Chairman Joe Jett, a Republican of Success, said he opposes Hendren's legislation as well. Quote, you get to the point of where enough's enough, referring to this year's fuel and fee increases for highways. You get to the point where enough's enough, the chairman of the Revenue and Tax Committee, Joe Jett, says. So I find this to be fascinating to me. I know that Senator Hendren has traditionally, when the president pro temp gets behind a piece of legislation, there's a lot of weight that carries, and he may get exactly what he wants here. There may be enough Republicans that are comfortable with all of the Democrats on board with this legislation, this new welfare program, that there may be enough of them comfortable with it. It's happened before. How do you think we got Davy Carter as Speaker of the House? How do you think we got the private option Medicaid expansion Obamacare in this state? It happened when all the Democrats and a few Republicans teamed up to grow government. And it looks like that's going to happen again. More dependency on government is not a good thing. An earned income tax credit, Arkansas mirroring what the federal government has done. Hey, just because the federal government did Obamacare, that didn't mean we had to do it, but we chose to do it anyway. Back in a moment.
When it comes time to shrink it, they don't shrink it. But that really wasn't very exciting, what happened on the Arkansas Senate floor. Wasn't that exciting. There was no debate. It was what happened directly afterward that there seemed to be a temporary wrench thrown into things when Senator Mark Johnson, who had voted for this piece of legislation, rose and immediately asked for a notice of reconsideration, which effectively froze the bill for 3 days. And everyone started scrambling. Here now to talk more about that is Senator Mark Johnson. Mark, thanks for being with us this morning.
My pleasure, Paul. Good to hear your voice.
Absolutely.
You're in Little Rock, I guess, today.
I am. We're broadcasting here from the Answer Studios, 101.1 The Answer, and we're always glad that they let us broadcast here. So, Mark, tell us, sir, I mean, what was the whole point of doing that maneuver? Well,
I have to first start with what the bill, what the legislation we voted on, which is a referred constitutional amendment, is, and then what my bill does and how it affects that. Now, the measure, and I forget it's a House joint resolution, so it's a referred constitutional amendment that would extend the, as you mentioned, the half-cent sales tax that goes to fund highways. This is part of the governor's package for fixing our roads, and I supported that. And I supported it day one. I never made any bones about it during my campaign that we had a serious problem with our highways. I have a very rural district where it's needed. All my county judges have shown me their needs, and so I always plan on voting for the bill. The governor outlined in his highway package how he was going to fund this. We had already passed a bill that would increase at the wholesale level what would work out to about 3 cents a gallon on gasoline and about 6 cents a gallon on diesel fuel. And then the third part of that three-legged stool to fund highways was dedicated revenues from the casinos, which Amendment 100 was passed last November, and it would basically enshrine into the Constitution the two existing casinos at the racetracks in West Memphis and in Hot Springs, and would allow 2 more casinos to be built in Pine Bluff and in Polk County. I should say Jefferson County and Polk County. It didn't. Everyone assumes it'll be Pine Bluff, but
of course
it could be elsewhere. But the bottom line is the governor tried.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We've got a jam-packed news day today, so stay tuned. We're going to talk a little bit about your local Second Amendment rights, what is being done this week, potentially, that you need to be made aware of. You're going to need to call your legislators and tell them to support advancing the Second Amendment here in Arkansas. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but I want to first introduce you to welcome back to the program, rather. Dan Perkins is back with us, master storyteller, author of the Brotherhood of the Red Nile Trilogy. Dan, how are you, sir? We appreciate it.
Good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. I wanted to have you on because I have been loosely following what's going on with this Brexit, or at this point, I'm worried that it's a non-Brexit Brexit. What can you tell us about this? And isn't this an example of the elites that, govern these countries just not wanting to listen to the will of the people?
You don't need me. You got it right. It's absolutely, you're spot on. I just think that we're seeing two mysteries play out. If you follow the Brexit issue, the vote was during the presidential primaries in the United States. And I remember listening to the analysis of the vote after it actually happened that same day on the BBC. And you could clearly tell that when they were interviewing the common folks in the hinterlands, they were very much in wanting to leave because they saw their country being destroyed, their heritage, their culture, their language, their laws. were being dictated out of Brussels. And already 60% of the laws on the books in England were driven by the European Union. And the British people were afraid, and rightfully so, that they were losing their identity and losing control of their history and their culture. And as a result, they voted, the common folk voted to leave. The night of the election, it reminded me of the night of Donald Trump's election in 2016. They were beside themselves. And it is an example where, as you pointed out, the majority will of the people was thwarted by the elite who decided that the common folks were not smart enough to make the right decision. We have the same thing going on right now in the United States. And it started when Donald Trump was elected, and the idea that the deep state, and we have a much better picture today to what extreme certain people in the government, the deep state, went to try and prevent him from being elected, and then trying to get rid of him after he was elected. And it's another example, and we saw in the last few weeks the scandal at the colleges and universities, where the elites in this country would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy their children's way into a prestigious university. It is another example of the elites deciding they know what's best for us, and they are held to a different standard.
We're talking again with Dan Perkins. You have heard about his books on the program before, the Brotherhood of the Red Nile trilogy. Also, you can see his writings at the Daily Caller, Clash Daily, LifeSet, Newsmax, thehill.com. Dan, you mentioned the American deep state, or just maybe just the deep state. And we've seen, like you said, we know the depths they're willing to go. We see the players, specific people, I think more. Certainly they're not comfortable with it. But, what they put the American people through, what they've put the president through in the wake of his election has been a bunch of really just theatrics. Just it's fake outrage, fake collusion, these fake conspiracies. Is that what's going on across the pond in Parliament as well? I mean, they're acting like this is a really, really difficult thing to figure out how to get, to no longer be a part of the European Union. It seems like they're making it difficult on purpose.
Absolutely. You're spot on, as the English would say. You're correct again. They're trying to say, again, to the common folk, you have no idea how difficult this is going to be, and we're not really we are not really sure that it's worth going through the process to figure out how to exit. And so they've been, for 2 years, now almost 2.5 years, going against the will of the people under a process under their government that allow the people to speak. And they refuse to accept what the people want to do. So they are, as Hillary says, they are the deplorables. They don't have the right to govern themselves. We have to do that for them. And they're trying to make it, as you said, make it much more complicated than it needs to be. England's been around for hundreds of centuries. I mean, it's not like this was a new country that was just created. And all these countries in Europe have been around for a long, long time. They have the potential to understand, to know how to govern themselves and how to get along with their neighbors. I've heard people say over the weekend, well, what's going to happen to borders? How are you going to prevent people from coming in from the north, dealing with other parts of the British Empire? And I said the same way we've done it. They did it for centuries.
Yep.
They don't want to. If they want to put a war, they want to put customs in. That's fine. They should be able to do that. But if they know how to separate themselves from this union by simply looking at all the laws that have been put on their books and getting rid of them, it's just like what Mr. Trump did when he came in. He used executive orders, just like Obama used executive orders, to try and move the country along as quickly as possible. It's not that difficult. but they're trying to make it more difficult because they want to prove that the British people are stupid.
So do you have a current update on this? I'm just curious of the global implications. March 29th, right? That was supposed to be the drop dead date. Is that still the date, or are they just saying, hey, we're going to postpone this, we're not going to Brexit?
There is a drop dead date of March the 29th. There is no deal in place of how they're going to exit. And theoretically, the 29th of March comes, they're no longer part of the EU, and there's no deal for exiting the EU. So we'll have some difficulty for a while trying to work our way through it item by item. But unless the Parliament, which is considering revoting to allow a new referendum to get the people to, quote, verify what they said the first time is what they want to do, which is a delaying tactic on the part of the elites. Theoretically, they're supposed to leave the European Union on the 29th.
Okay, so that's
with
still...
or without a deal.
Wow. So,
but, as I said, Parliament is considering the possibility of a new general vote so that they want to postpone the 29th in order to have a revote on the ballot issue of leaving. And the belief is that if it goes to a revote, Theresa May's gone.
Is there the kind of rage that we are seeing in France with the yellow vests? Do you think that exists in the UK?
The French are a much more passionate people than the people of England. The people of England are much more conservative. I don't know that they'll take to the streets over Brexit. They might. But what I do believe, inherent in your question, is that the British people are getting angry that their elected leaders can't seem to follow their wishes, and that's why they're talking about May being out, and why there's such turmoil within the various parties within the English political structure. A lot of people are angry, but they do it much differently than they do. The yellow vests is really a different issue, but in a sense, it's the people rebelling against the elites who again told them, well, we're going to have this global warming initiative, and you're going to have to pay for it by increased gasoline and fuel prices. And the people said no. The government backed down, but the people are still protesting other things that the government's doing. So the French people feel much more empowered over what they're trying to do with their protests than the British people feel somewhat frustrated that the elites are refusing to do what they want them to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anyone ever doubted, that there are essentially puppet masters that believe they can, control things from the top. I mean, that is on display now in so many governments across the globe right now. It's undeniable. And what's at the center of it, Dan, and I would assume you would agree, is that the people that actually have to live under these laws that are being made or these decisions being made by these powerful people, they're suffering in many results because of these decisions.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons why the protest started in France. The fuel taxes that they want to impose to pay for the greening of France were an burden on the part of the average person, and they said enough, and so they decided they're going to fight. I think what's amazing about the Yellow Jackets is how long they've been continuing to fight the fight and not giving up, and the government has become more and more frustrated. The elites are more and more frustrated because they don't understand how the poor people and the ignorant people are doing this to their country, and they never look within and never decide maybe it's something we've done wrong. It's always somebody else.
Yeah, the elites are the problem. That's certainly what I'm getting at.
They are.
Hey, Dan Perkins, I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for spending some time with us this morning.
Anytime. Thank you
All
for
right.
calling.
It's always great to have you on. He's the author of the Brotherhood of the Red Nile trilogy, and you need to look for his writings again over at the Daily Caller, ClashDaily.com, LifeSet.com, Newsmax, and TheHill.com. Folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to reset here. When we come back, I'm going to tell you about a potentially big vote when it comes to gun-free zones here in the state of Arkansas. You don't want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I think, to make good the promise of the proponents of the gambling amendment, that if you recall, they said Drive Arkansas Forward, I think was the name of their campaign, and they would, if you vote for this, you get your roads fixed. Well, there was not a single solitary word in that amendment, which is now Amendment 100 of the state constitution, that says anything about highways or roads. It was just a shell game to get the gambling interest bill or amendment passed. So I came up with my bill, which is Senate Bill 498, which would amend Amendment 100, and I'll come back to the process on that in a moment. But all the revenue from the casinos is not dedicated to highways. However, the governor and I both, as a matter of fact, I think there's a strong consensus in the legislature to dedicate that.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so it goes without saying that when you have a gun-free zone, you are inviting just absolutely mass casualties. There are crazy people out there, there are evil people out there, there are always going to be evil people out there, and if you want to do harm, these people, in order to live out their sick fantasies, and in the wake of what happened in New Zealand, this is a conversation that needs to be had. New Zealand wants to have more, they want to basically have even stricter gun laws. It's like they don't believe that people will still do terrible things or still be able to acquire the weapons, because criminals, if you're going to murder somebody, you clearly don't care if you break a gun law first before you do it. Okay? So, let's talk about State Representative Richard Womack. I'm very, very happy that he decided to file this bill. It's HB 1694, and I believe it's going to run tomorrow in the House Judiciary Committee. And I would like to ask for your help out there to try to just get engaged here. And if this is something that you think is a good idea, meaning eliminating gun-free zones, then I think you should get behind this, okay? An act to eliminate gun-free zones to repeal laws in conflict and for other purposes. Again, the bill number is HB 1694. The legislative intent. The intent of this act is to provide for the safety of the public by eliminating gun-free zones. What else is changing here? A person less than 21 years of age shall not possess a firearm. Let's see here. Upon the developed property of, public school kindergarten through grade. Listen, here's the thing, is in this bill, they actually have some pretty common sense exceptions in terms of where you can still not carry a gun, like at a school, okay? That's what that was just talking about, or in a courtroom and things like that. Like, it still has exceptions that are in there saying that you can't carry a gun in these places, but they're attempting to eliminate other areas in gun-free zones and such. Now, this is a common sense bill. We know that these gun-free zones, we know what they are. We know that they are soft targets, and again, this is where people go when they want to live out these sick fantasies. Now, if you go down to page section 6, which is page. Hang on one second. Page 9. This is where you get to some of the underlined portion of the bill. Okay, which anything that's underlined is the proposed changes to the existing statute. Possession of a firearm on public property. A person may carry a firearm in a publicly owned, leased, or rented building or facility on public land, on a public roadway, and on a public sidewalk. This section does not authorize a person to carry a firearm where prohibited by federal law into a facility operated by the Department of Corrections, meaning a prison, or the Division of Youth Services, or a county jail, into a courtroom without authorized from the presiding judge. However, a law enforcement officer of the court, bailiff, or any other person who is not a party to the case and authorized by a presiding judge is permitted to possess a handgun in the courtroom. My point is it's that first line, a person may carry a firearm in a publicly owned, leased, or rented building or facility on public land, on public roadway, and on a public sidewalk. It's just saying, look, we don't want to have gun-free zones. And yet you still have these other places like a courtroom, like a prison, where they're saying, hey, we still don't want to have guns in these places. So my point is, this is a no-brainer for Republicans to support. Now, if you take a look at the House Judiciary Committee, you have an interesting makeup. Now, this is the same House Judiciary Committee that voted for the clarification, the resolution saying that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state. So we do have a history of people on this committee who are for the Second Amendment, who are for recognizing what, speaking of elites, by the way, I could not quit thinking when I was listening to Dan Perkins earlier, I couldn't quit thinking, talking about the elites not responding to the will of the people, whether it's in France or whether it's in Britain, whether it's in the United States. And I thought here in Arkansas we have constitutional carry provision, and we still have the Arkansas State Police that will not acknowledge it publicly, and so that's very frustrating. But look at some of the committee members here: Carol Dalby, Rebecca Petty, Stan Berry. Oh, Stan Berry! Hey, let me tell you this: Stan Berry, he's from Dover, and he's on this committee. Okay, and so those of you who are listening in the Pope County area, first of all, we very much appreciate it. We appreciate you listening. those of you, feel free to contact State Representative Stan Berry on the committee and let him know what you think about this bill to eliminate gun-free zones. I think there's plenty of you out there who are big proponents of the Second Amendment, big proponents of this idea that, well, in agreement. I mean, are we in agreement that gun-free zones are where all these mass shootings take place, or are we not in agreement? So Stan Berry, I'm just looking at clicking on his picture here. Representative Stan Berry, Republican from Dover. I would send these state representatives emails. That's what I would do. So if you're out there and you're in Dover's in Pope County? So definitely. So those of you listening on KARV, 610 AM, 101.3 FM, KARV, out of Russellville there in Pope County. If you're especially around the Dover area in that district, what district is that? 68. Feel free to contact Representative Stan Berry. His email, according to his public email on the Arkansas House website, is stan.berry@arkansashouse.org. That's pretty easy, right? stan.berry@arkansashouse.org. And just congenially be like, hey, I really think this Stand Your Ground bill is a good idea, House Bill 1694, and please support it tomorrow in the House Judiciary Committee. I think that would be a good thing to do. Now, you also have on this committee, let's see here, Stan Berry, Charles Blake, he's a Democrat. He's not going to vote for it. Representative Sarah Capp, let's see, Nicole Clowney, she's a Democrat. Andrew Collins, Democrat. Cindy Crawford, I think Cindy Crawford will probably vote for it. She had some great things to say about constitutional carry a couple of weeks ago. And see, we got Marsh Davis, Charlene Fite. You know what? Charlene Fite, we broadcast in Fort Smith, and that's part of her district. So if you're listening on the Marshall, 1230 AM, 96.7 FM, that's KFPW out of Fort Smith, feel free to reach out to State Representative Charlene Fite. She's on this House Judiciary Committee, and I'm sure she's for the Second Amendment. I'm sure she agrees that gun-free zones are not a good thing when it comes to these mass casualty events. I mean, they take place in gun-free zones. Let's see if I click on her name. By the way, folks, you can do all of this in the at the Arkansas State Legislature website, where you can get everyone's contact information. So her public email address, and they respond well to emails, is just charlene.fight@arkansashouse.org. This is a lot simpler. I think their email addresses used to be different, actually. I'm noticing this for the first time. I could be wrong, but I think they might have kind of tweaked their system a little bit. But anyway, charlene.fight@arkansashouse.org. Send her an email about House Bill 1694, an act to eliminate gun-free zones, and say, hey, let's do this. Let's see. This is the thing. Ronald Reagan said that he encouraged the people to write. Now, this is back when you had to actually write. But to write to your congressman, to strengthen their hand so that when they're getting pressure, they can say, I've got the people on my side. The people of my district want me to do this, and it's the right decision. And so when it comes to the Second Amendment, and this is really just about public safety, because these gun-free zones, just reach out to these people and encourage them. They're Republicans, right? They're Republicans, and they know what. They know an armed society is a polite society. Just say, hey, we got your back. Because the bottom line is this. I'm hearing that there is some pushback on this piece of legislation. I'm hearing there's even inaccurate talking points being pushed by some in members of, let's just say, higher-ups. They're saying that this will cost money. Some are saying this will cost, they're falsely saying it'll cost anywhere between $50 to $100 million to implement a piece of legislation like this. Don't buy it. It's not true. That's preposterous. And you know what? I bet the Patriots of Act 746 will have all of the facts tomorrow during House Judiciary. Call your state representative. Tell them to vote yes on 1694.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
casino revenue, tax revenue, to the highways. And basically, our will, meaning the legislature and the governor's will, is to make good on the promise that the gambling interest didn't do. They told the people they were doing this, and so basically this would make them keep their promise. So I voted for the referred constitutional amendment, but I gave notice of reconsideration, so I'd have a moment to speak with the governor of how this fit into the entire revenue package for the.
Okay. So this procedure sent everyone scrambling. It was and this is really sad, but it was really the most interesting thing that's happened in the Senate the entire session, because things didn't go according to plan, and really there's a lot of predetermined outcomes that I believe kind of make you guys a formality sometimes, and that's very frustrating because I love the idea of legislating and using procedure. You have been around the Capitol since you were very young. And
since I was born, really.
Since you were born, and you know the rules backwards and forwards. And what was interesting to me is Senator Hester and Senator Ballinger, who voted against the referral constitutional amendment after you left the chamber, because I know you left the chamber. They were trying to figure out how to cancel your notice of reconsideration, because it held the bill up for 3 days, and they even voted against it. I thought that was very strange. So tell us, can you just tell us about that procedure, what it means, and there's a lot of people there that don't know the rules like you do, sir.
Well, Paul, first of all, to go into all of the machinations and why people do things, we only have, how many hours did you say we had to do this?
Yeah.
The thing is, but to kind of synopsize what's going on here, the rule allows a senator who votes on the prevailing side, so if it passes, that means you voted yes. If it fails, it means you voted no, to give a notice of reconsideration. And that's different from a motion to reconsider. And now, let me say that we learned that after the 54th day of the session, which we've already passed, you can do such a notice, but it must be immediately reconsidered, which means you'd have to vote. You didn't get the 3 days. But the notice of reconsideration means you have up to 3 days to bring that measure back and vote on it again. If you do nothing, it moves forward. It's essentially a hold. But I've used it one other time this session, and it had to do with a bill that I wasn't sure what it did. Actually, I've done it twice. So I guess I've done it a total of 3 times now. If you're not sure about something, you reconsider. Let's think about this a minute. In both those cases, I gave other cases, I gave a reconsideration notice. And in one case, it was a bill by Senator Breanne Davis relating to how property is disposed of, whether it should go to the auditor's office or not. And after discussions with the auditor's office and with the senator, I released my hold the next day. The other was a bill by Senator Ballinger, which had to do with alimony. And
I remember that one. Actually, I was in the room for that one.
I was uncomfortable with some of the things in that, and really wanted an opportunity to, if Bob could fill me in on why this bill was needed, I would have done that. He chose to go a different route. I think he's going to file another bill. But the point is, it's a slowdown. It's a slowdown.
So
let me tell you why why we needed a slowdown.
Okay, right.
I want everybody to understand the most important thing about this. The gambling interest wrote their own amendment. I think they fooled the people of Arkansas to voting for it. They voted themselves with 2 out-of-state owned casinos that are here, voted themselves a monopoly, and will allow 2 other out-of-state interests to come in and run a casino. And they said this money's going to go to highways. Well, my bill would restore the funding, because what the dirty little secret that's not known by a lot of people in Arkansas is that Amendment 100 actually reduces the taxes paid by the 2 existing, some people call them racinos. It's Oaklawn and Southland. We don't have to beat around the bush. It reduces their taxes paid to the state by over 50%.
Gosh.
And the revenue estimate from the Bureau of Legislative Research that I looked at, in fiscal year 2020, it would go from $67 million a year.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's hour number 2, and we're in the middle of our continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly. This is week number 9. Josh Waters will be with us 24 hours from now. We'll be talking about the week 9 Conduit scorecard, so I'll be watching out for that. I really still can't get over the fallout of what happened on Friday after we got off of the air. The link on the Arkansas Democrat Party's website disappeared. It quit working. Still no answer from them as to why they took down the photo of all of the Democrats and Senator Jim Hendren talking about this redistribution of wealth bill that he is backing with called an earned income tax credit, which essentially is just a really just a new welfare program as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's seems to be what it is. And, you know, you're going to get more than you pay in. I mean, that's what happens. The federal government already has this program. It has been done many times. It has been advocated for is what I'm trying to say. It's been advocated for many, many times. And hang on one second. Do we have... Sorry, I'm looking at an update. And the Democrats have failed. The Democrats have not succeeded in getting what they want. And now all of a sudden, we're going to have an earned income tax credit, and you're going to give the Democrats keep losing elections. I said this on Friday, you know. Michael John Gray, he was state representative. He's the chairman of the Democrat Party, was defeated by Republican Craig Christensen. And the Democrat Party continues to lose elections in the state of Arkansas, and now they're going to get an earned income tax credit? That doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense at all. And it's really frustrating. From a Republican standpoint, it's just extremely frustrating. Okay, here, let me see. I'm going to give you some specifics on what this bill actually does here when you take a look at it. Also, you have Bart Hester, okay? Bart Hester on Friday, along with Senator Hendren, they file a bill to reform the tax laws of the state to amend the Arkansas gross receipts to require the collection of a sales and use tax by certain remote sellers and marketplace. So it's internet sales tax. And it's also going to, let's see here, phase in an extension of the net operating loss carry forward period for computing Arkansas income tax. So it's going to help corporations. And I kind of thought this was coming down the pike because I'd seen the document early on in the session that this might be what's coming, and it is. I didn't know it was going to be paired with an internet sales tax, though. Like, you got to vote for the good and the bad in order to get what you want. Got to vote for the good and the bad. Anyway, so what does John Brumman have to say about all of this? I know that's what you woke up thinking this morning. You woke up thinking, what is John Brumman going to say about all of this? Well, John Brummett says this, possibilities for the poor. He says, the uncle's state government was on trial Thursday in Washington for punishing poor people illegally. Meantime, the nephew was announcing in Little Rock a bill co-sponsored by Democrats to help poor people. Indeed, the Arkansas Hutchinson dynasty gives and takes away. I refer to Governor Hutchinson and Senator Jim Hendren. Hutchinson is the uncle, Hendren is the nephew. Sometimes I refer to them as King Asa and Prime Minister Jim. You should just refer to them as uncle and nephew, attorneys at law, uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. The legal proceeding, he goes on, in Washington was in a lawsuit filed nominally against the Trump administration, but it's specifically against so-called work requirements for Medicaid recipients. You know what I can't wait to see? When the courts find that work requirements are illegal for whatever reason, or let me just say if, because they could uphold them. If the courts find that the work requirements are illegal, I can't wait to see how politicians will contort themselves to continue the program anyway. Because, we do have several people that say, oh, if these work requirements get thrown out, that's bad. We'll have to end the program. No, you won't. Blue Cross Blue Shield is paying too much money to the politicians to keep the program. There's no way it'll ever go away, ever, ever, never. Never again. It will never go away. Even if the federal government were to drop the match rate from 90-10 to 70-30, you guys would still find a way to raise more taxes on us to pay for it. I promise you. I know what you would do. I have seen it too many times. It'll just be, it'll be like it'll be like a sociological experiment to watch you guys come up, do these mental gymnastics of why you got to keep the program. Now, there'll be new arguments, poll tested. The lobbyists are happy. Lobbyists would actually love for by the way, the lobbyists in Arkansas would love for the Arkansas work requirement to be found illegal, because that would mean they'd get even bigger contracts from health insurance companies telling the lawmakers and legislators, to not do anything, to continue to pay for it, and to be okay with the program ballooning even more than it was. You know what I'm saying? Like, the lobbyists in this state would love it if there was a crisis and Arkansas Works might have to go away, because if it did, they would be paid to fight to keep the program the way it used to be. Anyway, the legal proceeding in Washington was a lawsuit. Let's see what happened. John Brummett goes on. What's happened in Arkansas under this so-called work requirement is that more than 18,000 people have been thrown off Medicaid. The lawsuit argues. Scrolling down. I'm sorry. I want to get to the part. Meantime, listen to this. Meantime, back in the politically unpredictable little state of Arkansas. Oh, it's pretty predictable, John. And on the bright side, Nephew Hendren gathered co-sponsoring Democrats and Republicans around him, not a lot of Republicans, to announce the filing of a bill to create a federally modeled earned income tax credit for low-income earners in the state. Unlike the recent tax cuts for the rich, which will be paid for by cuts to poor people on Medicaid and in other services, the measure from Hendren would be paid for by mathematics, not pain. It would do that by raising taxes on cigarettes, vaping, and e-cigs. Now, I'll say this again because it's a very important point. You can oppose this bill because it's a redistribution of wealth scheme and it's an earned income tax credit, and it's what the Democrats have always wanted. Why give it to them? You can oppose it on that basis, or you can oppose it because the mathematics don't make any sense. Folks, the cigarettes and the taxes on the cigarettes is a diminishing return over time. It will not continue to bring in the revenue. It will. There are people. I'm just telling you, I know people love to vape and everything else. They're trying to get in on it. But eventually, we're talking about something that's a diminishing return. New people are going to sign up for this earned income tax credit every day. Okay? It doesn't make sense in the long term. A lot of people think this might have to do with a deal, some sort of deal. The Democrats have supported the Hutchinson agenda for years now. Not just this session. The Democrat Party has been needed in order to get around the constitutional requirement for budgeting, the 75% rule. The Democrats have gone along with Hutchinson, even voting for a bill that would have ended the funding for Medicaid expansion, counting on Governor Asa Hutchinson to then line item veto it, which was unconstitutional. Many think it was. So, my point being, I think there's probably something to that that this is a deal that's been made with the Democrats because the Democrat Party has been needed to pass Hutchinson's agenda because of the conservatives in the House and a few in the Senate that don't want to budge, that haven't wanted to budge historically. And that's the truth of what's going on here. That's why you have the Republican president pro temp of the Senate flanked by all these Democrats in a photo that the Arkansas Democrat Party pulled down from their website after we talked about it on Friday. Joe, we'll show this one more time in case people are just now tuning in. Here is the tweet. Go to my Twitter. Here it is. Interesting, the link to the Arkansas Dem press release on earned income tax credit no longer working. I covered it extensively this morning. This is the photo they took down, probably because they don't want conservatives to figure out an excuse to vote against this piece of legislation because they're trying to achieve a policy goal that they've wanted for years. Over at Conduit for Action, hang on, let me go back to Conduit for Action real quick. This may be the most important 30 minutes you listen to of the broadcast all week, actually. Conduit for Action, redistribution of wealth legislation filed in Arkansas. Senate Bill 571 is called the Earned Income Tax Credit. It's a spending program. Liberal advocates argue it's just modeling the federal law that's been in existence for years, but conservatives are critical of the cash giveaway that's intended to redistribute the wealth. Listen to this. Just 2 years ago, the same idea was proposed by Democrats, but the bill only received 28 out of 100 votes. Only 4 Republicans voted for it. The legislature opted instead to pass legislation to give tax relief to lower-income working people in terms of their income taxes, based on a history of Arkansas conservatives opposing the idea of an earned income tax credit. And the sound defeat of the legislation just 2 years ago, it's surprising that Senate Leader Jim Hendren sponsored the income redistribution legislation. Why are some Republicans supporting liberal legislation soundly rejected 2 years ago? It has the smell of a political payback to the Democrats for supporting other legislation. This session alone, they have supported the tax and spend Republicans' plan for supporting the governor's road program, voting to increase the tax on gas, diesel, and sending a new half-cent sales tax to be voted on that would start in 2023. So that's where that theory comes from. Now let's go to the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Greg Harton. Yeah, it's still Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. This is another article here that kind of gives you a conceptualized view, puts everything into context. Let me say that. Greg Harton, who's a pretty liberal guy, headline: Northwest Arkansas in the midst of taxing times. Few things conjure up a drive for new government spending as much as a vibrant economy, he writes. When economic conditions are strong, as they are these days, government leaders know the time to ask voters for money is ripe. Even Republicans, who became dominant in Arkansas with talk of smaller, more efficient government and lower taxes, are demonstrating they'll jump at a chance to create new or expanded taxes. Governor Hutchinson and his legislative supporters have cut income taxes, but they have also imposed $95 million a year in new fuel and other taxes to fund highways, as they're going to ask voters next year to make a temporary sales tax permanent so highways can get another infusion of more than $200 million a year. Hutchinson also tapped a new form of taxation, one that might be called voluntary. Most people know it is casino gambling. Hutchinson's plan will take $35 million from casino taxes and shift that money into highways. And Greg Harton writes, cha-ching, cha-ching. I just think it's great. I mean, you got liberals who are they know what's going on here. Can you imagine if we had Republican leadership in this state that actually made John Brumman angry? No, I'm not talking about I mean actually angry that the state is doing what it is actually. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see it. I don't know. Maybe we will. It's not that I want to see the man angry, but you understand, when the most liberal columnist in the state of Arkansas is constantly praising the Republican governor, something's wrong. Something doesn't seem right. Am I the only one that notices this? No, of course not. Listen to this. Listen. That silence is the sound of awkwardness coming from the Marble Palace when you had a bunch of people that didn't think, that they had no idea back in 2014 when the governor won election. They called it for him at 7:30. They had no idea that John Brummett was going to be actually writing articles praising the pragmatism of the Republican governor. Anyway, it's just fascinating to me. Let's go to this other one. Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette editorial, The People Rule. This is a hit on Robin Lundstrom. Robin Lundstrom, of course, is trying to help small businesses by tweaking the minimum wage, the mandatory minimum wage increase that got on the ballot, because that whole ballot process now, a lot of people think, is being exploited. I don't know. You be the judge. I think there could be good or bad come from it. In this case, you had a bunch of people. There's a lot less employees than there are employers. I'm sorry, there's a lot more employees than there are employers, and they voted themselves raises from their employers, and it's going to have disastrous consequences because when Arkansas's minimum wage increases to $11 an hour, if you look at per capita income, that's going to mean Arkansas's got the highest minimum wage in the country. So you have State Representative Robin Lundstrom, who's willing to take the argument, the conservative argument, to the people and say, listen, this is going to be really bad for our small business, and it's actually going to hurt the people who voted for it, who they thought that this was going to help them. It's actually going to hurt them. Well, last week, the governor and the Republican Party came out against Robin Lundstrom's bill to try to stop some of these minimum wage increases from hurting businesses with less than 20 employees and nonprofit organizations. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. If we were actually talking about, there actually might be some blowback here if we actually had, a press trying to help nonprofit organizations. No. State Representative Robin Lundstrom, she shouldn't be doing this because the people just voted on it. I'm proud of State Representative Robin Lundstrom. I'm glad she's filed this piece of legislation. I'm glad she's willing to take the heat. Unfortunately, the governor and the chairman of the Republican Party immediately came out and said, we don't support this. We don't support this piece of legislation. We got to respect the will of the people. Well, that's all well and good. You want to respect the will of the people, but you don't want to respect the will of the people when it comes to the half-cent sales tax that's set to expire, do you? We voted on that in 2012. I guess if it's been 10 years, then, or 8 years, then it's okay to change or go against the will of the people when it comes to a tax sunsetting. The Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette, they are upset with Robin Lundstrom. Their headline here, The People Rule Unless Robin Lundstrom Disagrees with Him. Governor Asa Hutchinson this week demonstrated again why he's our kind of Republican, conservative in his leadership and reasonable in his application of good old Arkansas common sense. Throw in a dose of respect for the state's voters, and it's easy to recognize Hutchinson rises above the average Arkansas GOP lawmaker in the House or Senate. When you kind of ping-pong around these articles, it does give you a pretty good snapshot of what's going on in Arkansas politics today. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Year to about $31 million a year. And so what my attempt, and this is what Senate Bill 498 does, it tries to solve the problems created by Amendment 100, which includes the fact that you told a county in west central Arkansas that you will have a casino, and that county voted against it. So we're hopefully going to fix that. But the main thing is, the reason this had to do with the 1/2 cent sales tax is it's part of the funding that the governor wants. And I don't think everyone understood how this prospective casino funding fits into the highway plan, and that's why it was relevant. Now, my mistake, and I apologize to him for it, was not to inform the leader of the Senate, our President Pro Tem, what I was doing, because that's a courtesy. And you mentioned how things are kind of predetermined. If we didn't have some understanding on procedure, then it would be chaos in there. And it kind of
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, going over to our Facebook live feed. You can check it out, facebook.com/Conduit News. I want to give a shout-out to a fairly new listener. His name is Bear. Bear writes, happened to locate this show a couple of months ago. Glad we have someone to keep an eye on the Marble Palace for us. Hard for working folks to work all day and keep up with what goes on. Now we can know what the Marble Palace swamp is up to. Bear, it's my pleasure, sir. I appreciate you using this program. I want you to share it with all your friends, everyone in your sphere of influence, okay? Because they need to listen to the program every day or as much as they can. That's why we archive these shows. They're not just in the morning. You can listen 24 hours a day at conduitnews.com. And so you feel free to share links. If they don't want to use the video or the data, that if you watch the video, then that can really hurt your data as you're going throughout your day mobily, I guess. Just get the audio-only version. The audio-only version is at iTunes and SoundCloud, where you don't have to worry about the video, and it's a lot less has a lot less of an impact on your data plan. Because I know some people have the unlimited thing now, and that's good, but some people still only have a certain amount of data allotted every month. Bear, thank you so much for finding the program. Thank you for listening to the show. And again, just please tell your friends, because we're trying to get. And you know what? You make some good points, or you raise a point, Bear. It's hard for working folks. I wonder if there's any people. I know there are people from the Marble Palace who are some of the good guys who are listening, and there's some of the guys I disagree with who are listening as well. It's hard for working folks to keep up with what's going on. And that's exactly right. You know why the whiteboard says mum's the word? And we'll change it here. We'll have a new whiteboard tomorrow. It says mum's the word because you guys are allowed to operate in a place. You can only do the schemes that you're doing, and you guys know that it's schemy. I mean, come on. It's a bunch of schemes. It's pass this legislation so we can pass this legislation and we can tweak this and tweak that. We're going to tell people that we've cut taxes, but the reality is we're raising taxes. Now, we'll wait and see what the end result is, but we know what we've done in the past. We know that right now the Arkansas General Assembly is asking you to believe that there is not 1 ounce of savings to be had in the current state government. Now, what I mean by that is there's not one cut that can be made. They're asking you to believe that in all of Arkansas state government, that there is not anything they can do to cut spending and use that for tax cuts. Now think about that. Everything's got to be revenue neutral with them, and it's not going to be revenue neutral when it's all said and done. But they're asking you to believe that. It only works if mum is the word. And what that means is if the people don't know, the Marble Palace will be able to continue to operate in its current state forever. And so people like Bear, who found this show, he says a couple of months ago, it's hard because he's out there making a living, right? He's got to put food on the table. He doesn't have time. They're taking money from him. They're taking his tax dollars from him, but it's really hard because, honestly, if you are just reading what you're reading in the mainstream press, a lot of times they just write exactly what the leadership tells them to write, and they're going to frame things. They're basically, some of the people in leadership are writing their own stories because there's not enough skepticism into what's actually going on. Now, not everybody. There's some good journalists out there that I probably have some philosophical disagreements with and that sort of thing. But you see what I'm saying? We certainly here at Conduit News are putting out information that you're not getting anywhere else in these other outlets. And that's the whole reason we're doing this, is because we don't think that we're trying to get the truth out there. It really is just about the truth. And let's just own up to it. I'll say this. At least they did vote for the tax increase on your gas and diesel. At least they said, you know what? We're voting for it, meaning that's a clear-cut example of them saying, they didn't refer it to the people like they did this other thing where they say, well, we didn't vote for a tax. No, they voted for a tax increase.
I was for a minute or two, and I think that's because a lot of people weren't aware of the rule and what I was doing.
I thought it was fantastic. I think you should do it more often. I think everybody should do it more often. I think they should legislate. But
Jim and I talked about it, and as soon as he was a little bit upset when we walked out in the hall.
It looked like it.
When I explained to him what I was doing, and actually his first reaction was, "Your bill has nothing to do with this." And as soon as I explained why it did, he totally turned around and said, "I understand." He said, "That's fine." I said, "Now," he said, "how long do you want to hold it?" I said, "I don't want to hold it at all." I said, "I just want people to understand how it fits into the mechanism." And as you saw, Paul, if you were there, I went back to the well and I explained the purpose of 498 and what we're trying to do and how it fit into the process. And then I moved to withdraw my notice of reconsideration.
Okay, yeah, and so let's talk real quick. Senate Bill 498. This is attempting to address really the tax cuts the casinos got by being written into the Constitution. So is this going to raise taxes on casinos?
Well, if it passes, it would. It would, but it would bring them back to where they are today, more or less. And
okay.
let me mention this, and this is where we really get in the weeds, Paul. Amendment 7 to the Arkansas Constitution, I think most people know, it gives the people the right to to initiate amendments and acts to the Constitution. And it was passed about 100 years ago. It's this initiative and referendum. Now, you sign petitions, you get something on the ballot, you vote on it, it's law or it's an amendment to the Constitution. A little known thing is it also says that any measure I believe means constitutional amendment or initiated act, passed by the voters, and that would also let me throw in, that also means measures referred by the legislature. Anything voted on by the people can be amended by 2/3 vote of both houses. So the House and Senate by 2/3 vote could amend Amendment 100. Now, there's a 1951 court case, which I think is horrible, but it basically says, no, the words in the Constitution don't mean what they say. And we have been operating on that for, about 70 years. The thing is that I believe it means what it says. And if you'll recall, last year, the Supreme Court in the sovereign immunity case said the words of the Constitution mean what they say in that instance. So what Amendment 100, what Senate Bill 498 would do would be to use that process outlined in the Constitution. And this would absolutely have to go to the Supreme Court before we.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program. The number 870-275-9799. Oh my goodness, what an incredible turn of events, really, when you think about it. I'm going to revisit this real quick. So we have on Friday, we had the coverage of the news from Thursday that the President Pro Temp of the Senate, Jim Hendren, had a press conference with a bunch of Democrats. And there was a photo of him with a bunch of Democrats putting out this bill that has what is a big piece of the bill is an earned income tax credit. Now, this, in the article in the Gazette that we read on Friday, it quoted, Senator Jonathan Dismang. Now, he's the former President Pro Temp of the Senate. Jonathan Dismang is quoted in the Gazette on Friday saying he doesn't support Jim Hendren's bill, and even saying that this idea of an earned income tax credit has nothing to do with what they talked about in the task force meeting. Remember the task force on tax relief? Remember this? They met for 2 years because they didn't want to do any meaningful tax reform, like big structural stuff 2 years ago. So they said, we got to wait 2 years. Remember that? Okay. So I feel like there was a lot of pressure building. Okay. A lot of pressure building on this. Hey, Joe, will you come get this? We come get this real quick. So I feel like there was a lot of pressure building because towards the end of the day, we had another bill that was filed on Friday, and that bill was Bart Hester's bill that has some corporate tax reforms about net operating loss, along with the internet sales tax that they want to do the internet sales tax. They're now combining these two things. Okay? So that makes it hard to support. You know, you like some of the corporate stuff that it does, internet sales tax. But then you had this other article from the Tax Foundation specifically stating that the corporate tax proposals were, you got it, discussed in the Tax Reform Legislative Task Force, directly contradicting what Jonathan Dismang said. Well, but technically it doesn't contradict what Dismang said because we're not talking about, we're talking about the article that gave you bad press, you know, the one about the earned income tax credit. Isn't it weird that you would announce a really big piece of legislation with all the Democrats on one day, and that kind of blows up, and then you announce this other thing, which would have been better to announce today, by the way. But instead you announce it later. Isn't that interesting? So, the phone number, 870-275-9799. So, all of that leads up to today's article by Michael Wickline. Let me go over here to this one. This is, here it is. Okay. And the title of this one today, Senate panel poised to look at agency changes, tax cuts. Okay. And it mentions Senator Jim Hendren. Let's see here. Another discussion is expected in the House State Agencies Committee. Okay, so they're also talking about the reorganization bill. That's a big bill. It's like a 2,000-page bill. Okay. And let's see here. What else do we have? Scrolling down, you eventually get to State Representative Lane Jean. Thank you, Joe. State Representative Lane Jean says this. I'm not for it, meaning he's not for Hendren's bill. He noted that creating an earned income tax credit was not part of the recommendations of the Tax Reform and Relief Legislative Task Force that Jean and Hendren co-chaired. Wow, So now we have not one, but two people, one in the Senate, Jonathan Dismang, one in the House, Lane Jean, that are saying that they don't want to support an earned income tax credit because it's not what was talked about in the task force. So they just want ideas of the task force. What's funny is, one of my monologues on Friday, I kind of lamented that the task force seemed to be a little meaningless. This was right before the Tax Foundation article came out that said, oh, by the way, this idea was talked about in the task force. So it wasn't meaningless. Wink, wink. It wasn't a meaningless effort. If you'll talk to politicos around the Capitol, they'll tell you off the record or not publicly, or they'll tell you anonymously, they'll say, you know, it's pretty obvious that the tax plan and the roads plan, they created them 4 weeks ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's pretty obvious that they were like, oh, we're in session, and these were things that they were actually crafted in the middle of session, not in some task force. And they'll tell you a lot of these ideas the task force came up with, they're just, you know, they didn't do any of them. I don't know. Anyway, so Representative Lane Jean, Republican from Magnolia, a member of both House committees, said Friday, "I'm not for it." He noted that creating an earned income tax credit was not part of the recommendations of the task force. This is an exact quote. "We did the governor's tax cut, and we still have to do the internet sales tax." That's baked into the governor's budget. So they know they have an uphill sell. This has been the plan, now that if you think about it. They know they have an uphill sell because the internet sales tax failed last time. So they're putting these corporate tax tweaks in there, carryover, operating net loss, these things, and we'll get into that. But they're putting all this in there in order to entice people to vote for the internet sales tax. Then you have House Revenue and Tax Committee Chairman Joe Jett said he opposes Jim Hendren's legislation. Quote, "You get to the point of where enough's enough," he said, referring to this year's fuel and fee increases for highways. So you also have Joe Jett coming out and opposing Jim Hendren's earned income tax credit bill. And again, what is the earned income tax credit? Well, it is, simply put, a policy goal of the Democrat Party for a long time. It is a policy goal. They've wanted this for years. Joe, do we have those? Hey, do we have those screenshots? Can you pull those screenshots up from Friday that we didn't get to? Remember those? I had you download them. There was a few of them. I think was one of them from John Brummett. I think about Jim Hendren's plan. Let's throw that up there. Let's read that. Here it is. Hendren, some senators, including other GOP ones, and all 24 House Democrats are on board, not just on raising standard deduction, but a federal-style earned income tax credit refundable for low-income workers. Splendid. Just splendid. Splendid. I get you use the word splendid, but why the just splendid? That's just a little bit too comic book villain for me. Splendid. Just splendid. Do it. Execute Order 66. What about the other tweet? Wasn't there another one in there? We had another. Yeah, here we go. Democrat Senator Joyce Elliott. Nothing but compliments of Senator Hendren. Together, thank Senator Hendren and all other sponsors. So the Democrats, man, they are on board with this. That because it is. Go back to my Twitter, Joe, because I've got. Let's see some of my recent tweets here. Hang on a second, because I was trying to get an answer for the Democrat Party yesterday or on Friday as to why they didn't like. So my initial tweet is here. It just says, interesting, the link to the Arkansas Democrat press release on EITC is no longer working. I covered it extensively. They didn't want that photo out there, but there it is. Okay. Then I had another tweet where I asked the Dems if they didn't like the photo. So scrolling up there, did y'all not like the photo? I thought the press release was good as far as explaining the attempt to accomplish the party's long-standing policy goal of an earned income tax credit. I wanted to screenshot the coverage of it. See, it's embedded in the tweet, Joe. It's that one there. Okay. So then I asked this one. Were y'all asked to remove the press release? Don't you love the use of my words, y'all? Were y'all asked to remove the press release? If so, by who? Again, this link no longer works, and I cannot find a new one. And then the last tweet was, I wonder if the Arkansas Democrats removed the link and photo because they realized the press conference was really about the formation of a brand new political party in Arkansas, the Jimocrat Party of Arkansas. Who knows? Who knows? We'll wait and see. I still haven't gotten a response back. Something tells me I'm not going to get a response. I don't know. Something tells me it's just not going to happen. Folks, we're going to take a break. We're going to reset here. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
But it would allow us to amend Amendment 100, in my opinion, fix Amendment 100, and it would do a few things, and let me run through them real quick. One, it would require the people of Pope and Jefferson counties to actually get to vote on whether or not they would have a casino. Now, some people have said, look, Jefferson County made it clear when they voted overwhelmingly for Amendment 100 that they want it, and I could see taking that out. But in Pope County, the people voted against it, and they're very adamant against it. And I say, then you need to have a referendum. If it were rejected in Pope County, then the two neighboring counties that are bisected by an interstate highway, which would basically mean Johnson and Conway County, but I don't like putting the name of the county in the Constitution, then they could each hold referendums if they chose. And if both of them chose to do it, the one with the highest percentage of vote would have the opportunity to be awarded a casino.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
On taxes galore. Welcome back to the program, 870-275-9799. Real quick, just a little quick analysis. I know we have talked about the Democrat Party a lot. I know we have talked about their policy goal of an earned income tax credit a lot over the last 2 days, but that's because it's just so fascinating to me that this would be something that we're going to pursue. We will follow this. I would reference the Conduit for Action article that is up right now to go get the analysis there about how an earned income tax credit in terms of a redistribution of wealth. Now, you remember Obama, right? Obama was all about the redistribution of wealth. He was all about class warfare. He was all about identity politics. And that's what the Democrat Party is now, right? It's all about finding a victim and an oppressor. You got to have the victim, you got to have the oppressor, and you got to point out the victim and the oppressor in order to get political power. And we are not immune to that here in Arkansas. We really are not. So essentially, if you look at this idea by Senator Jim Hendren and the Democrats, I didn't really think I would ever say that this session. I'm going to be honest. I'm a pretty skeptical person. Obviously, I'm very skeptical of. I don't want the government to grow. I want it to stay the same size or shrink. But I don't think I don't really think I was going to say, well, Jim Hendren and the Democrats' idea. That's weird, you know. And people are going to say it's bipartisan, folks. If Jim Hendren wasn't supporting this piece of legislation, no other Republicans would be supporting it, and there's very few that are. Well, I actually haven't looked at all the co-sponsors. I just know that photo. Just go look at that photo in the press release that came out. I mean, why would you give the Democrat Party is shrinking? Why would you give them an earned income tax credit policy victory? I mean, the Democrats are going to wind up having a successful session if this goes. Do you realize that, right? The Democrat Party of Arkansas, if this bill goes through, is going to have a very successful session. They're going to achieve a policy goal, a welfare program to redistribute the wealth. Listen, Jim Hendren would have Arkansas taxpayers share more of their income with anyone, including illegals. Can you say that word? Is illegals offensive to you? Would share more of their income with anyone, including illegals who make at least $1 or who have children. We would be forced to match to the federal welfare at the rate of 5% of what the federal government pays. Another method to grow dependency on government by the matching principle. We've talked about this. We just want to match a portion of what the federal government does, or the federal government says, here, take this money and we'll give you 70%, but you got to come up with 30%. And people say, well, it's free money. Well, it's not free. We got to come up with 30%. Well, we need to do it. And then, of course, it's just how government grows. It's one of the ways it does with matching principle. Plus, Senator Hendren's bill adds to the standard deduction by $1,100 from $2,200, which makes it $3,300. And then for taxable income after the standard deduction or itemized deduction, his bill totally eliminates taxes on ACE's rates for the taxable income after deductions. So what does that mean? Which means you have to make over $12,200 before you pay taxes in Arkansas. If $1 of that is earned income or disability, then what that means is you're getting money back. You're getting more money than you paid in. That's the whole, which is, I mean, I'm fine with that because that's what an earned income tax credit is. That's the whole point of an earned income tax credit, is to give people back more money than they paid in. That's why it is a welfare program. That's why it is a way to redistribute the wealth. I'm tired of all these millionaires and billionaires. That's what this is about. So, yeah, it's kind of nuts to say, I'm going to make this point again. The Republican Party of Arkansas specifically targeted Democrat Michael John Gray, who's the head of the Arkansas Democrat Party, and was a state representative running for re-election back in November. They specifically targeted State Representative Michael John Gray because they thought it'd be funny if he lost. And it was funny. Because it was kind of like rubbing the Democrats' nose in the fact that they are a diminishing party and they are less and less relevant every single election cycle. Hey, you know what? We'll go ahead and just target Michael John Gray. He's state representative. We'll find a Republican. They found a good one in Craig Christensen. And Craig Christensen beat him. Now, did the Arkansas Republican Party run a candidate against the chairman of the Democrat Party, who's a state rep, so that we could then give the Democrat Party an earned income tax credit? A policy victory? Surely, and I think that's why I think Senator Henry has just gone too far here. That's why Jonathan Dismang has come out and said this wasn't in the task force. That's why Lane Jean has come out and said no. That's why Joe Jett has come out and said no. And who else has come out and said something like this privately, that this is not a good idea? Why would we want to do this? Go look at that photo again. Joe, throw the photo back up there. The one they don't want us to see. Apparently, the Democrat Party has either been told to take this photo down right here. This was the press conference. They have either been told to take this photo right here down because the link no longer works. They could have at least taken the photo down and then left the press release up, but the whole press release is gone about how they support this huge policy that the Republican Jim Hendren is proposing. They've either been told to take it down or they figured, you know what? We're not very popular with Republicans, and when constituents see this photo, they're going to tell we have our chances of passing this policy victory that we've been trying to get passed for years are going to significantly decrease if we leave this link up, because conservatives are going to share this link, and if the Democrats are for it, inquisitive minds might ask, why would Republicans then be supportive of it? So let's remove the link so that they don't have the information to convince conservatives or even moderate Republicans that this is a terrible idea. Do you know why they did this? This is probably the latter. It's probably the more likely scenario. They did this because they want to get a Democrat Party policy victory in a Republican-controlled state. And that's 100% the truth right there. I mean, they haven't officially responded to me. They haven't said, hey, this is why we removed the photo. This is why we removed the link. Luckily, the internet is forever. And I'm going to refresh the page one more time in case they've thrown it back up there in the middle of the show. I want to be accurate. Yes, the link is still dead. And if you go to the news page and refresh the news page, I don't see any press release. Still, no press release. It's just something about vote today on minimum housing standards. That's all I see. Folks, this broadcast is available up at conduitnews.com. And we're going to be, tomorrow we will take a bigger look into the corporate tax proposal that pairs it with the internet sales tax increase. More money coming from you. Is it worth it with the corporate tax provision? I'm not saying corporate tax cuts, but because it's tweaking the net operating loss carryover. The amount of time you can carry that over. And so we'll analyze that for you and have maybe a more detailed analysis for that. But very interesting what happened Friday. A lot can happen in 24 hours. I really appreciate you guys listening. I want to once again shout out to our new listener, Bear, who appreciates the program. Tell your friends, everyone in your sphere of influence, if they want to know what's going on in their name. These politicians are pursuing thoughts and ideas in your name. Then listen to Conduit News Radio and get your news from conduitnews.com. We will see you tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.